Hey y'all. So I'm back for another live stream slash get ready with me to talk about this whole thing with Brian McKnight. I have on yesterday's makeup and I just want to do a quick refresh because I just did my makeup last night. And yes, sometimes I do sleep in my makeup and then try to refresh the next day. But I want to talk about this whole thing with Brian McKnight because so I grew up with Brian McKnight. He was seen as the the lover with the before one. So 1, 2, 3. Before that, he had a big breakout song. I forgot what it was now. Me and my girl Carrie used to listen to it all the time in high school. But anyway, so so he's made some news again recently, like in the last 3 days, because apparently this is the situation if you're not up to date on it. And then I'll explain the narcissism comment. I titled this Brian McKnight's Narcissism because I wanted to point out that he may or may not be a narcissist. And I'm trying not to throw around the word and be clear that not everyone who does narcissistic things is a diagnosed person with narcissistic personality disorder. But you can be a regular schmegular person out here in the world and do narcissistic things. Like I know I have done narcissistic things. I have acted narcissistically, and it doesn't necessarily mean that I have narcissistic personality disorder. Just like all of us, narcissism exists on a spectrum. And let's say someone with narcissistic personality disorder who's diagnosed, like Lee Hammond, on here, I think he's mental illness. He clearly states that he has narcissistic personality disorder, so that's a 10. But all of us exist on the spectrum of doing narcissistic-ish. And so that's why I said Brian McKnight's narcissism, because we don't know. We don't know if he has NPD, but he did do something narcissistic. So the story, this is the story. In short, Brian McKnight was married. He had 2 sons. I don't know if he had 2 kids. I don't know if it's 2 sons, but I know there's a Brian McKnight Jr. And then he cheated on that wife, cheated on her with Julie, was the first wife. I just read this, that's why I remember. Then he cheated on the first wife with this chick named Patricia. Then Patricia and him had Brianna, okay? And I think they had one, just her. I'm not sure if they had another one. And then Julie raised Brianna as her own, apparently. And then at some point, he left the second wife, and now he's with the third wife right now, and they just had a baby who's 6 months old, who he also named Brian McKnight Jr., which I just thought like, but anyway, but that's not why he's in the news. Why he's in the news and what happened was that recently he posted, well, first of all, I guess I should say too, I had heard about this before. His kids have come out before. The first 3 who are all grown up now, the first 3 have come out and said, our dad, hey, Samantha, our dad has been, abandoning us our whole life. So his kids have come out. And then I remember like a few years ago reading that Brian McKnight himself actually came out against his son and said that they were bad kids and all this stuff. But what I want to point to that I think was narcissistic of him, again, clarifying, I'm not calling him a narcissist, but some narcissistic behavior that he did recently, and this is what Twitter is dragging him about, is so his current wife, just had their baby. The baby's like 3 months or 6 months old. And he's been posting a lot about his current wife and her previous kids from her previous marriages as if they're his only kids. But what I thought was particularly evil and narcissistic about what he just did, that was so sad, was he posted a picture of him and his stepdaughter, who's a grown woman, or maybe she's 19, 20, early 20s. And he posted her and he said, "Thank you so much for making me a girl dad. I just thank you so much for being the most wonderful daughter." Y'all, he has a daughter already, Brianna McKnight, who's a grown woman, who he actually said that she had an incestuous relationship with a different family member. And she actually took Brianna McKnight, his daughter, grown daughter, took him to court to sue him for malicious lies. And in order to do that, she had to expose her entire sexual history, which if you're a woman, that's well, we all know it sometimes doesn't, it doesn't pay to expose what's been done to you, because as a woman, people will always make you have to prove that you were a victim. Anyway, but she won. She actually won against her dad, who was saying malicious lies about her. And it turns out that it was not an incestual relationship. It was a abusive dynamic. But even that, I mean, I think that just kind of goes to show what kind of trauma he's did against his own children, that he would say that about his daughter when she was actually a victim, and then she had to prove it by exposing her sexual history. And then he comes in with this post about his stepdaughter. Y'all, it's messy. It's messy, but it's such an intentional, but this is what I think is very narcissistic about it. It's so it's intentionally dragging her, like saying, thank you for making me a girl dad, when he has a daughter, is an intentional jab. Like the first thing I thought when I read that was like, oh, that is so narcissistic. That is because it's so intentionally evil. And you know, it doesn't even really matter if anybody else caught it. Like the intention was to parade his love and care and concern for this new daughter in front of his real daughter, actual blood and loins, so that it would be hurtful and harmful to her. And the way that he named his new son, his 3-month-old or 6-month-old son, Brian McKnight Jr., when he already has a firstborn son named Brian McKnight Jr. Yeah, that is... It's such a narcissistic thing to do too, because sometimes, and I'm not saying he's a narcissist, but sometimes people with high narcissistic traits who are over here, like if this is NPD and this is just like, you know, a very calm, empathetic person, but like, you know, everybody on the spectrum, but to name 2 boys the same thing to try to prove like you're dead to me, like the first son, you're dead to me, which he said before, and the way that he is kind of flaunting this like new family as if all of these other kids and wives and spouses didn't exist, is it's very narcissistic. What'd you say? My dad, who was absent and rather abusive and cheated on my mom, adopted his stepchildren and was viewed as some kind of wonderful person, but never cared for me. Oh, I thank God for keeping me. I'm glad he was not in my life. I'm so thankful. You're right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm so sorry about that. Yeah, that's very narcissistic too. Like coming off as one thing, but then behind closed doors, like, so maintain the work it takes to maintain an image, which I think Brian McKnight has done, to maintain that image, and then behind closed doors to be something else, like your stepdad was for you. Wait, was that your dad or your stepdad? Yeah, either way. So yeah, I think that sometimes it's helpful to point out when we see something that's like pretty clearly narcissistic, which Brian McKnight, I'm glad Twitter is dragging him. People are calling him a deadbeat dad. I don't even think it's just a deadbeat dad thing. I think a deadbeat dad is someone who doesn't care about his kids, even to speak on it, but to flaunt and jab and intentionally hurt, that's not a deadbeat dad. That's some real narcissistic, evil, like psychopathy kind of stuff. Deadbeat dads just don't care. They don't think about their kids. They don't mention their kids. Don't pay for their kids. They're just on about their life. Brian McKnight is like, no, let me taunt you. I'm going to taunt you. That's something completely different. Something completely different. It was your bio dad. Yeah. And that sometimes that can be worse. That can be even worse. Yeah, I was just telling somebody the other day, because my bio dad, well, I mean, yeah, I actually did have a stepdad, but my bio dad, he, you know, he was abusive to me. But what I thought was even worse was that after he went to prison, he told everybody on his family side that that I was just lying, and that my mom had told me to lie, that he abused me, so that he would go to prison because she was mad at him because he was married when they got pregnant. Which, you know, just to clear it up, I did no such thing. My mom did no such thing. My mom didn't even know he abused me until I told her. So she did not have me lie on him or anything like that. But when I found that out, it was such a huge betrayal. It was so sad. It was one of the saddest moments of my life, y'all. You'd think that him actually abusing me, sexually abusing me from such a young age would be a sad moment, but it was so much worse. Oh my God, it was so much worse when I learned that. It was like insult to injury. Like, you did this horrible stuff to me, went to prison for it, and then had the nerve to tell people that I was lying. And I found this out years later and after he was dead, so I couldn't yell at him. Couldn't say anything to him. You know, he was dead. I found out 2 weeks after his funeral. Brian McKnight, knowing he has a spotlight like that, should have at all costs, exactly, protected his children by not talking like that. Yes, normal people who actually love their babies will never talk like that. I agree. I completely agree. So, yeah, and the same thing for my situation with my dad. Like, if there was actually ever any love, and that's another thing. At the funeral, people were going on and on about how much he loved me, which I thought was so funny. And that's why it even got brought up, because I brought it up to one of my brothers who I didn't even had never met before, or maybe I had met him when I was a kid, but like a couple weeks after the funeral, I was like, yeah, I was mad at the funeral because everybody kept talking about how much he loved me, and all I could think about was like, wow, you know, that's love. And then he was like, well, you know, since he didn't do it. And I'm like, since he didn't do what? And that's how I found out, which I think is very narcissistic. Very, very much so. I don't know if my dad was a narcissist or not. I never knew him. I don't know. He sounds like, when I hear stories, that he was that he might have been somebody who actually had narcissistic personality disorder, but I never knew him, so I have no idea. But finding that out was like that. So anyway, just evil men. Narcissistic men in the world is just, ugh. I mean, it's not just men. I know it's not a man problem. It's a human problem. But it is discouraging. It is discouraging. And it's always sad to see your heroes fall. Because like I said, like, I was a big Brian McKnight fan, man, in high school. What was that first song? Do you remember? I'm sorry, sis. What a sad man to know any good people would say is only lies. Yeah. Do y'all remember what that first big breakout song that Brian McKnight had? It was like a sad love song. I can't remember it right now. But we listened to that over and over again in high school. And you know, the thing is I know that he wrote that about his first wife. The first song that he made, whatever it is. And you know, that it's such a good example that like someone can portray something and make you feel a certain way and it still be BS, knowing what he did to all of them. So anyway, I should brush my teeth before I put lipstick on, but oh well, too late. Anyway, I hope y'all have a wonderful day. It's Thursday. Is it May the 5th? Is it? If I ever believe my work is done, then I start back at one. No, it was before that. It was even before that album. It was his first album. I cannot think of it. It was before that song. Yeah, I can't remember it either. Yeah. Anyway, I remember too in high school thinking he was so fine. Now I look at him, you know how like just the, you know, the shine just like rinses off a man when you find out he's evil. I don't know. Has that ever happened to y'all where you like, a man is just so fine and then you find out he's evil and then you're like, oh, because I went to his Instagram to stalk him when to Brian McKnight's Instagram when all this came out, and I'm like, well, he's getting older too, but yeah, I mean, I still think a lot of older men are attractive, but yeah, no, you just evil. So anyway, all right, y'all. Well, I'm finna get on with my life. Thanks for coming in my Get Ready with me. I'm going to try to do this as often as possible and just chit chat about random stuff. Have a good day. Thanks for joining. Bye, y'all.